Hi everyone, and welcome to Learning Data Live 2020, the afternoon sessions. I'm Elizabeth Patterson, and I'm going to be moderating this presentation. Bernard Aschwanden will be presenting 10 ways DITA can help drive a unified content strategy. Learning Data Live is brought to you by Scriptorium, the content strategy experts. Since 1997, Scriptorium has helped companies manage, structure, organize, and distribute content in an efficient way. If you're trying to figure out how the DITA content model can best support your content, or you're setting up a DITA system, please contact us and we would love to work with you. LearningData.com and Learning Data Live would not be possible without the help from our sponsors, so we thank you all very much. Attendees are going to be muted during this webcast, but we still want your input during the session. So if you would, type your questions and comments at any time into the questions module, and our speaker will answer questions at the end of the session. Go ahead and locate the questions module in the GoToWebinar interface so that you know where that is. And also be on the lookout during the question and answer portion of the presentation for a link to our session evaluation survey. We would greatly appreciate your feedback. And with that, I am going to go ahead and pass things off to Bernard. Bernard, are you ready?
I sure hope so.
All right, here we go. I have just made you the presenter.
Perfect. So I'll show my screen. Hopefully that's popping up for everyone.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great. And the audio obviously is coming through nice and clear. So thank you very much for the introduction, the opportunity to be here. I am jet lagged. I had 3 hours sleep after being awake for 24 hours. So we'll see how this goes on a couple cups of caffeine, and I will jump right into things. So the session is 10 ways DITA can help drive a unified content strategy. I have a company called Publishing Smarter. I'm a content strategist involved in a lot of publishing technologies that are out there, write a lot of material about this type of field, and geek enough that I can dive in and keep up with people and know when to step out of the way. I'm a certified technical trainer, active in content management, topic-based writing, structured content such as DITA, and involved in the Society for Technical Communications. I'm a past president of the organization and an STC Associate Fellow. So I'm going to launch right into the session here and talk about driving a strategy. A unified content strategy is really that methodical and purposeful management of information assets across all of the divisions of your enterprise. This really has to be done in a way that breaks down the silos and makes that information easy to find and easy to use. Structured content is really best as a way to strategically optimize your content. So it frees your content from the format, and because it's free of the format, it also frees it from tools like, for example, Microsoft Word. There is no proprietary format that you have to think about. In turn, this then enables intelligent reuse, multi-channel publishing, efficiencies in the translation, and all sorts of enhancements when you're delivering content to your end users. Structure also gives you a markup for the content, and it does so through this semantic set of elements and metadata. That in turn can lead to high levels of consistency and help lower maintenance efforts. Structured content really is fully ready for XML, and that behind the scenes XML is what gives structured content all of its so-called superpowers. There is an XML standard that's really taken off in TechCom, and that's DITA. And I would say one thing that TechCom communicators know inside and out is content. So whether it's the planning, the creation, the review, or the delivery, we are the experts in the room. It's probably safe to say that we're the experts inside the enterprise. So prior to DITA, there wasn't much we could do when it came to strategizing with the rest of the organization or pooling the different tools, the processes, depending on where you're listening from, the content, and that's really no longer the case. We're starting to see DITA being adopted from a lot of the expected, but also some unexpected divisions. Originally, definitely the software and the hardware companies were in the game because DITA came from the IBM space, but it's grown into a lot of other industries. There's a really good reason DITA has become that accepted industry standard. It provides an intuitive and a very friendly approach to guided authoring. It breaks down content into manageable and reusable information type blocks. The authoring and the reuse benefits really outweigh the initial investment. And I use the word investment very carefully, not the cost. Most people don't see putting money into their retirement savings as a cost, but rather a long-term investment. And that's how I think people need to look at not only content, but also working with DITA. It also separates the content from format, which I mentioned earlier. So DITA really positions itself perfectly to bring about a much needed evolution of the enterprise content. And that makes it easier to do things like deliver the right information to the right people at the right time in the right format. And I'm also going to add that it has to help them make the right decision so that they can move on and stop reading the content and start doing their jobs. So unified, DITA-driven, enterprise-wide approach to content can really have a profound impact on the enterprise. Content created by the enterprise then becomes treated more as a valued and valuable corporate asset. I see it sort of as a win-win-win. One win, it's more efficient for the enterprise. Another is that it's easier for the content creators. And the third is your end users reap the real benefit. They get the content they need and they get it when they need it. So out of the 10, I'll start off with the idea of content reuse. Content reuse is probably one of the easiest ways to show the value of a DITA-based approach to your documentation. Experience shows not everybody has an easy time wrapping their head around it. The reuse mechanism lets you take a small or a large chunk of content whenever you need it and reuse it without the copy paste. It's a little bit like the difference between attaching and managing a document in an email type of a conversation, as opposed to creating or managing documents in a shared and online environment, but it goes much further. I'm going to show you a sample of some of these ideas in use a little later as well, and I'll just do it live because, danger zone. So think about using content over time. If you've got an attachment and it's inside an email or it's a file that sits somewhere on somebody's hard drive, you have to hunt to find it, identify the current version, and a lot more. So online gives you a common, a shared single source of truth. You know that that is the defined piece of information. If it is that one defined piece of information, you have this huge benefit of being able to trust the content. Now, DITA takes it further. You store the content outside of the delivered or the final document. And you do it with these smaller components, often a topic. Anyone can help assemble the topic in any order and publish it to any format, assuming they have permission to do it. Whenever you update the topic, it gets updated everywhere it's used. A good unified content strategy is going to consider all the assets and all of the different ways that they can be reused across the enterprise. So marketing, training, support, technical documentation, odds are there's overlap in anything that they create. And the level of detail or the end user might differ, but you want to have the flexibility to handle the similarities and the changes. If you consider this one reusable component that you see here, all the different ways that that personal protective information or chemical safety standards, product safety information can be reused, write it once, use it everywhere. The good and the bad, if you mess it up, you make the mistake once and the mistake appears everywhere, which is actually a good problem to have because then you fix it once and it's fixed everywhere. Translation, localization as well. DITA does keep the content and the format separate. So your authors, the translators, aren't manually formatting text. They're instead using semantic tagging. So it could take a piece of information and make it a title. Now, if that title's in a task or a concept or a reference or a table, figure, section, whatever, the look and feel is assigned based on the context of use and the fact that it's a title. If it has to have table 1 or table A or table I, double I, triple I, automatically at publish. If it turns out that you want the title, if it's 3 levels deep or 2 levels deep or 1 level deep to have a different look and feel, again, automatically done at publish time. So now you get this immediate and large saving. Translators aren't worrying about the look and feel. They just translate the words. They know what the meaning of the word is, that it's a title. If you combine that with the DITA reuse environment, and you only pay to translate content once, remember the personal protective equipment and so on in the previous slide, it doesn't matter how many places you use it. The cost and the management effort for translation is dramatically reduced. The savings become pretty noticeable, assuming, of course, that you've done the careful planning, all of the correct implementation. You can also start to implement a more sophisticated translation mechanism, sending only the content that's changed instead of the entire document, and making sure that the management of what's changed is automated. So you end up with smarter and more efficient ways to deal with content. You get savings, and then it's multiplied by the number of languages that you translate into. If you're working in a DITA-optimized component content management system, so a CCMS, component content management system, you can also start to automate the management of translated content, get alerts when the source language has been updated, If translation is required, you can provide an integrated delivery mechanism. You can even take advantage of machine translation to help get things started. That brings it to the idea of vendor interchange and tool neutrality. DITA is a broad and open standard. It's managed and maintained by the OASIS committee, and it's made up of experts in the industry that work as volunteers. So it's not a tool, it's just a framework. It can be used by anyone and any software tool. Because it's positioned as a vendor neutral standard, you can use whatever tool you want, and you don't risk vendor lock-in. So you're not in a situation where one tool controls what you do. Now, there's a lot of tools out there, and some of them might be best at helping you author and publish content without ever having to see the code. Other tools might be better at managing the content or reviewing workflows. Some of them have online components, so you can allow a subject matter expert to contribute, and there's minimal technical writing skills required. It means also that you can switch tools whenever you need to, or you can push content through one tool and into the next as it's needed. It also means that you can link these tools together. So you can use a suite of tools, passing the DITA XML from one to the other, and you achieve the result that works best for your enterprise. It's kind of interesting that all of the vendors that work with DITA allow the content to be interchanged completely with all of the other vendors because it's core DITA. And that means that you have the advantage of being able to drop a vendor and pick up a different vendor pretty much at any time. And your core content remains unchanged and can quickly flow from one to the other. We've done a ton of client content conversion, and once it's in DITA, we don't have to do the conversion a second time. Integrated work sharing. So DITA breaks up the content from these long documents into smaller modular pieces, and they can be assembled into documents at publish time. This antiquated idea of content ownership is based on a historical book paradigm where one person was generally in charge of the content through the life cycle. I don't believe that anyone owns the content in most organizations. The organization owns it. It is a corporate asset. If you leave, you can't take it with you. It belongs to the company and it adds value to the company. So it is an asset, just like anything else the business has. This massive shift starts to occur when you introduce modular writing of DITA. You can start to dive into this collaborative, workflow-controlled content creation and review environment. DITA lets a lot of individuals contribute topics that can then be used into a single finished document, and it maintains consistency between them. So all kinds of different people are contributing. The DITA optimized CCMS lets people share the content. Subject matter experts can contribute by creating or providing reviews. The reviews become real-time. They're collaborative. There's comments and suggested changes that could be in a centralized environment, and a shared view of the content is there for all the reviewers. So they can see each other's comments in real time. They can have discussions. They can track the items that are accepted or rejected. And as an organization, you can keep an audit history of the comments and whatever the resolution is. CCMS working with DITA also lets you connect the content to the workflow. So everything follows your own desired process. It doesn't leave room for things to fall through the cracks. You start to combine these collaborative workflows and you solve a lot of business problems. You can start attaching deadlines and due dates to content, to the review process, and you can have this step-by-step environment that becomes part of the project and is fully managed. So you end up with this centralized control of the content lifecycle. This lets you have visibility into the metrics around every single step as well, so that you have a deeper understanding of the cost and the effort the enterprise puts into creating and approving content. There's an awful lot of stuff to be gained here. I mentioned earlier, content as a business asset. For decades, product documentation was often an afterthought. They weren't seen to add revenue to the enterprise. They were a cost. It was provided because the dumb end user couldn't use what was such a clearly and simple solution, at least simple in the eyes of the product team and management, the people who worked with it every single day and saw it as working exactly the way as expected. In some cases, there's a regulatory need. Content's written because the competition does it. But lately, we've seen a big shift in the thinking at the highest levels in organizations. We're into the information age, clearly. There's a growing enterprise level awareness of the importance of documentation and content. If you consider the purchase by Disney of something like the Star Wars franchise or the Marvel franchise, that was purchased largely for the value of their content. So we now see content as part of the overall customer journey. and it's being extended to all content created within the enterprise. This treats all content as an output of the business as much as any other product. Content has that inherent value. Once that's understood, that the content is a business asset, and it starts to permeate into senior management, you get support for managing content that's generated by the enterprise, and that becomes more efficient and consistent because it's intended for your internal, your external, for all of your end users, and it's a way to retain the knowledge. The driving force behind creating any of the high standard includes the need for things like templates, style guides, tools, processes, content storage, retrieval, baselines for quality. And then there's the byproduct of today's enterprise-wide change as well, where we can treat content as an asset and therefore share it across departments. You break down silos because it's not my department or your department, it's shared materials. You've got these sharing infrastructure tools and management buy-in, and therefore departments that are creating similar types of content can start leveraging each other's work. Crossovers can include typical things like marketing or training, support, and technical documentation, but we've also seen a trend for other departments to start to use some of the more sophisticated content management features. People in operations, legal, business process, finance, education, they don't even know they're writing DITA. They just know that it's easier to create, share, find, review, publish anything that they're doing. Part of that is because they're using templates for authoring. This assisted authoring environment has become much more stable and powerful, and you have the ability to configure them and build templates and set it up to work with little or no data knowledge, or have something that's used by people in an environment where they know everything hands-on. And hands-on, in a minute, I'm going to go in and do a demo of some of these ideas. Now, DITA gives you the infrastructure for creating the content in topics. The good and the bad is based on a quote that an engineer friend gave me was, the great thing about standards is there's so many to choose from, and DITA definitely does a little bit of that. It provides you topic, concept, task, reference. It allows you to insert elements as seen here. You can work with different tools. Great. However, the problem is that within DITA, there's still so many different things you can do. So the more you can guide your authors based on their experience level, the better it is for their experience and for the quality of what you receive. You can go in and create these managed shells so that they write clearly, consistently based on a type of content that they're writing for, and understand the audience's goals for the content. You can add or further refine restrictions and permissions to help those who author content as well. So it could be a simple template. You've got a contributor that's a subject matter expert. You just want them to write a couple of things. They don't need to know or see any code. Sure, done. You could have a more involved template, a little bit of a casual DITA author, a person who knows big picture, generally what to do, and knows a little bit of the details. Then you can also have this really powerful writing environment for use by the power user, if you will. That's somebody who works in DITA every single day. And again, all of the content that's created by all of these people is shared. And that brings me to the next slide, which says demo. And that tells me that I need to switch over and do a couple of different things here. This is Frame. I'm just going to go in, and in FrameMaker, I'm just using it because I have it on my machine, DITA concept. So I'm going to create a concept here. And while I am creating a concept, I'm also going to go over to AEM, and you can see I have two folders here, mouse docs and mouse doc source. These are my demo files. I'll come over back into FrameMaker here. All right, on 3 hours of sleep, let's go in and try to create a couple of different things. Let's start with what is DITA, and I'm going to apologize if the DITA purists that are participating are looking at this and saying, that's not tech, it's a demo. I'm just putting it together in order to show ideas. So short description, it's a standard that allows you to create topic-based content. For those that want topic-based, hyphenated, etc., sure, go for it. When you create the documents, you can do whatever you wish with it. And I'll just throw in a paragraph. So I have the structure working in the background here. I see the title, the short description, the prologue, the author. I can click beside the P element. I can click inside the enter paragraph text. This is nice if you know your DITA, which I sort of kind of do. So it's great for me. I'm a little bit of a power user geek on this. All right, I don't actually want a concept body, so I'm just going to click it and delete it. And I have my what is DITA, and I'll just do a save as. I'm going to overwrite this DITA XML file. That's my local document. This is my AEM repository. So you can see my demo folder has this mouse doc source and a backup that I was poking at, and there's my mouse doc source and a backup. I'm going to use FrameMaker for this one. Just right mouse click and create a new folder. And I'm going to call this one DITA demo, and I choose OK. So here I am, the geek. I know enough to go in and do this kind of stuff and upload my DITA XML file. You can see it was created at 1:20 p.m. Current time is 1:20 p.m. So it's created right now. 1:20 at home, 11:20 where I am on the West Coast. So the file was uploaded successfully. I switch over here. I don't see it yet. I'm just going to do I think that's my refresh button. Hey, look at that, DITA demo folder. I can select it, I can click on it, open it, and there's my what is DITA. And I'll just click the little pencil icon and it pops open. And now this shows me the prologue information that I can expand. And it shows me the author is Bernard. And if I want to, I can go in and I can use my tags. And if I know what I'm doing with this, I can come along and I can start using a little bit of a geek environment to add content. So here's my concept body. And this is not nearly as feature rich as what I saw in FrameMaker, but this is just through Google Chrome using the XML web editor. So I'm going to add a paragraph here. There are many ways to learn more, including watching this presentation. There we are. And then I can take that information, I can save it, I can upload it to the repository with a revision. I can try to just close it, which is never a good idea because if you close without saving, you lose everything. So I'll just click save because the system prompts me, it guides me as I'm going in and doing work. So let's try to create a second piece here. I'm going to create, let's go in and do a DITA topic. I'll build a reference this time. So it's very much a guided environment. Let's do DITA topic types. Apologies to those that want to capitalize the first letter of every single character in a file name or a title. I'm not even thinking about file names. I'm just creating content. So DITA topic types. Here's my tags. They're still showing. I click inside a section here. Alt-Enter inside this tool allows me to insert things like a title. And I'll do concept and press enter, and there's a paragraph. The generic start point for what is or why would I type of information. And I could continue to add more content. I'm not going to because I don't want to put together this huge workshop on how to write with and work with DITA, but I'll just click save. I'm not using the upload revisions and so on, but that functionality is available. Again, I just want to show you a little bit in regards to creating content. And then I'll create another one here, a task, again, another topic. These templates are 100% configurable. So you'll see that if I open a task, and let's do this, plan for topic-based content, create. So this template has different elements in it. It has things like this steps with step and a command and a 1, 2, 3. What if I don't have my tag showing? Well, this is what an author might see who's just creating content without necessarily wanting to know anything about the markup. So this individual comes along, plan for topic-based content. This is the context. So why would you do this? If you don't, you mess it up, then you have a problem. All right, so let's do develop a plan, test it, implement it if it works. Okay, that's really poorly written. Develop a plan. You can get Bernard to help with this. So that's what somebody writes up, and I look at it. It's not really a step. It's other information associated with develop a plan. So if I receive this and I'm the more experienced DITA user, I could always go in and choose the tags. And I decide here inside the command after the step, I'm going to insert some info, some additional information to help the person understand developing a plan. And then I can take the text and move it up here. So I can have a novice contributor write stuff, and then I can have a more professional DITA user make it consistent with the voice and the style and the standards that we've established inside the business. Again, I save that and I close it. So I've gone in, I've created a couple of discrete pieces of information. I'm going to create one more in here. I'm going to do a generic topic. And again, for the DITA purists, apologies if you don't like what I'm about to do. I'm going to do reuse notes and create it. Yes, I'm not putting it into a reuse folder, and I'd probably throw sample image in here without creating an images folder, but I'm just trying to create a couple of little pieces. Reuse notes, don't actually include this topic in your delivery, but instead use the notes that are below as reuse items. All right, so I'll come down here to the paragraph. There we go. Again, I'm using Alt-Enter, and I'm going to put in a note. And this is where it gets kind of cool. I put in a note, and I'm just going to say something along the lines of plan topics before you do too much, or it will mess up your writing. There we go. And yes, I have a typo in it. I'm going to take the note and give it a unique identifier. So I'm giving it an attribute of an ID, and I'm going to call this one plan topics. That one I give it a nice clean name, and I'll just close it and save it on the way. All right, here I am back in my content. I start to write, I put together some material, I have my reuse notes, and I mentioned this piece about plan for topic-based content. I'm going to open that to edit with the pencil. I'm going to turn on the tags because this is not something that I would want my day-to-day user doing inside the organization. This is something that I'm doing as the person who is more effectively managing the content long-term. So I'm going to go and find my reuse, which is inside my DITA demo. There's my reuse notes, and I select it. I can see it with topoics, so be it, topoics. There's my plan topics, and I select it, and it says plan topoics before you do too much or it'll mess up your writing. And I'll just save and close. I'm lazy, so I'm doing it that way. One click, and then I choose the save here instead of trying to get over top of that little icon. What is DITA? Let's pop that one. Oops, I've just clicked on it, which gives me the view of the document without the ability to edit. The nice thing is that, again, the interface is configurable, the edit button is available. I've resized my environment, and my environment on this monitor cuts off some of the information that I might normally want to see. So I have the ellipses there. Adobe's done a nice job providing it. Here's my concept body. I'll click, and once more, I'm going to insert. It remembers the one I just used, so plan topic and select. And there it is. Note plan topoics. Topoics. Yeah, all right. Plan topoics. That's just great. Oh no, I forgot to save it that time. That's not a big issue. I can go in once more, pop open, go in, edit, insert. And you can see it's very quick once you get to know the interface, like anything. People will say, oh, but Microsoft Word is so fast for me to work with. Yeah, because you know it, you've worked with it for quite a while. The same thing here with AEM or with FrameMaker or with Oxygen or with XMetal or with EasyDITA or any of the tools that I work with. It's easy once you know enough about it. I'm going to edit this reuse notes because I've got the typo in it. I'm annoyed by that. Plan topics before you write. There we go. I'm just going to close that and save it. So I fixed it here in my reuse notes. Now the reuse notes has a couple of cool things associated with it as well. It has properties. This is where it gets to be kind of fun. It's used in the plan for topics and in DITA. So I know what the impact is if I go in and I make a change. I know exactly what it's going to modify. I have AEM specific metadata that makes this more searchable. I have the document in one of many states. I can go in and do all kinds of different settings, and everything that you see inside this is 100% configurable as well. I like this used in, I use it a lot. Plan for DITA top. Okay, so I click on one of them. It jumps in, and you'll see that it doesn't say plan topoics or you'll mess things up. It says plan topics before you write, because the reusable piece that is referenced in both of these files has been updated. or it's translated, or it's reviewed, or it's approved, or whatever. All of my reuse on a topic level and on a smaller level of information works 100% as expected. So that gives you a little bit of the idea of where it's used. Right now, though, I've got these as discrete pieces of information. So I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to create a map. And I'm just doing a generic map rather than a book map. Lots of DITA information on what the differences are on those. I'm not going to get into it here. Title, default map by Bernard. This is a terrible name. I'm just going to create that, open the map. I apologize for the naming convention on this. I'm really not doing a great job on making it names that are incredibly useful, but this document isn't for anyone except Bernard. So I'm going to go into the demo here, and there's my default map. I'm going to just drag and drop the reuse notes. I'm going to drag and drop the what is DITA, topic types, and they're all equal to each other here, which is, again, a terrible way to do things. Plan. So there's my 4 things. There's nothing great to say here. This map exists solely for my convenience. It has the stuff that I work with often. It turns out I really shouldn't actually work with this one here, so I could remove it, or I could take this one and I could promote it or demote it, or I can select a couple of them and impact them in bulk. So again, the map is for me. I have all of the topics, they're all equal to each other, and I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to do something really silly with it, which is publish it. I say silly because this is a terrible way to do a map. I'm just going to choose these 2 and say go. And the reason I'm telling you that this is a terrible way to do a map is that everything is set up at the same level. So I really don't have any hierarchy to it. There's no heading 1, heading 2. It's just a bunch of information. And while this is publishing, let's go take a look over inside the FrameMaker world. If I expand the DITA demo folder, you'll see that all of the files that I've created, including that default map that I created, are now available to me here as well. I have a shared repository. So the benefit is multiple in this environment. I can use different tools. If I feel like it, I can still come along and do similar things to what I saw in the other environment. I can go in here and let's do a view, and I'll turn on element boundaries as tags. So there it is. I have this structure view, which isn't available inside AEM, but it is available in FrameMaker. I get asked by people, so what's the right tool? I don't know, go build a house and tell me what the one tool is that you need to build a house. Having built a log home over the last 4 years, I can tell you the most useful tools that I had access to were probably a bank account with money in it so that I could hire the right people to do the right job. And then I was able to contribute and move forward and do what I actually wanted to be doing. And the same type of thing in the DITA world. Get it to the point where the tools are doing things that you need them to do the right way, where you hire people to help. So here's my default map, and it's got what is DITA, and it's got topic types. And if I go to the reuse note, it has the reuse plan for topic base. There's my note. So it's kind of nice in the publish, and I can come along in here and I can do things like DITA for my search. It comes back and it gives me these topics. So not bad. I can jump back to the home page. This is, it's all right. I'm very much not appreciating the work that I have here. There it is. Everything's a heading 1. Everything's a heading 1. Yay, it's a PDF. Now the look and feel of the PDF and the look and feel of the AEM environment, both of those are 100% configurable. You can make them do exactly what you want, which is great. Everything can look the way you want it to look. So we're about halfway through. I've got several slides left. I want to show you, one more thing here though. I'm going to go back over here and build another map. Now remember, this default map that I built has all of the topics. I'm going to create a second map. This part's actually cool. So imagine inside your organization, you have dozens, hundreds, thousands of. Let's do thinking about DITA. All right, that's going to be my DITA map, and I'll open it. This time I'm actually going to think through things a little more as I work with my demo folder and this set of documents. If you're thinking about DITA, I might want to start you off with what is DITA. So that gets you thinking about what is it. Then I want subordinate to that, plan for topic-based content, and equal to that, DITA-based topics. So give or take, I might have a heading 1 or a chapter or whatever on what is DITA, and that will have 2 subordinate pieces. They might become heading 2s inside that. This is the same set of materials with a different hierarchy. And here's where it gets to be really cool. I save that and I close it, and it jumps into the publish, and I'm going to do the same thing, the AEM site and the PDF, and generate. Now it's generating. This is running on a server somewhere. Respectfully, I don't care where it is as long as it works right. You'll remember the AEM site when I opened it. Everything was at the same level. Oh, it's already done the site. That really cuts into my discussion time. Everything was at the same level, but this time, what is DITA? And it has these 2 subordinates, plan for topic and DITA topic types. And if I click plan for topic, well, it gives me plan for topic based. If you don't, you mess it up, you have a problem. There's my note. Here's my 1, 2, 3, and here's what is DITA. Oh, check that out. I hover over it. It's a standard that allows you to create topic-based content. Yeah, that's the one. I click it, and that text was the short description that I had up here. If I hover over plan for topic or I hover over topic type, nothing pops up. And the reason is I don't have a short description. I go straight from DITA topic types into concept. So that's kind of messy. The PDF, I pop it open. That took a little longer to generate, but the PDF document, come on, there we go. Thinking about DITA, so it doesn't have the spaces because I never typed any into it. But check out my table of contents, main topic and 2 subordinates. Hyperlinked, of course. When I click it, it jumps. What is DITA? There's my plan. There's my DITA topic types. DITA topic types, straight to concept. Last one in here. Last one to do. DITA topic types. I do this all the time. I don't click edit. I just jump into the file and then I have to click edit. That's my muscle memory at this point. So here I am, I've got my title, I alt enter because I know enough about DITA. There's my short description, I insert it. Several, but based on topic and maps. And I could insert my reuse down into the document, etc. But all I did here was type in a short desk. And again, this is where you really add a lot of value. That short description could end up being used for search engine optimization. Those words could carry more value moving forward. If I open up my thinking about map, you'll see that all of the topics are still here, but I can generate and get that short description kicking in. So here comes my AEM site, my PDF. It is going to generate new outputs. The last ones were done at 135 and 136, and it's now 137. So again, it's generating, and I'm going to switch over to the slides and get back into that if I remember at the end. So let's go back over to the slideshow a little bit. So during the demo, I went in, I created a folder. I worked with an author tool on my local machine, FrameMaker. I worked with a browser-based tool, in this case, the Adobe Experience Manager. I took the DITA topics, I moved them from the local FrameMaker environment up onto that shared environment, created my reuse material, inserted the reuse piece into a couple of the concept task reference environments, showed you the source for it, updated the note, reopened the topics, created a map, added everything, came up with a better map, publishing those, and then I went into the map and I added yet another short description inside a document. So the demo showed a couple of the different things, the benefits of some of the things that I talked about earlier already. Content reuse, I definitely showed you that. Translation, imagine if that note, the next session today is actually in Spanish. So imagine if that note was rewritten in Spanish. I would translate it once, even though it's used 2 or 5 or 1,000 times, which is really nice. Tool neutrality. I could work in FrameMaker, I could work in AEM, I could work in any software tool that supports DITA. The work sharing, I showed you a couple of different ways that you can see content and make decisions on who is going to work with what type of material and how they see things. Talked a little bit about content as a business asset and the idea that we want to write consistently, and reuse enables that. But the other thing that's great from the business asset standpoint is that all of the content I've created is now managed inside that CCMS, inside the component content management system here. So lots of different things kicking in. I'm just going to try to refresh that. and hit the outputs. All right, so it's still waiting for something over there. We took the material and used different templates for authoring. When I created a concept, task, or reference, I was provided with different initial materials. Here's where we start to get into some of the more powerful things. You can manage your content releases as well. So a DITA optimized CCMS lets you introduce that managed environment. So you can automate and control when it is that an end user sees the release of the material. You have a secure way that you can write about registering your license. And then you have an audit track, an ability to go in and publish the right content after it's approved. You can share the material and customize it. So imagine this one source document. And if you follow straight across, I put it into a first version of a user's guide for PDF and HTML for Apple. So it says, register your product, go to the Apple website, etc. Well, if I do the same thing for registration for the PC version, right underneath it, it says go to the Microsoft website. Maybe marketing just puts it together and says, when you register your license, we make it easy for you to register regardless of the operating system and platform you work with. If you're on Apple, if you're on a PC machine, it's all good. Now you update the way that the licensing works, you're going to have that release for the next version, 2.0. You write the information, you put it into your PDF and HTML for Apple, and it says, here's exactly how you do it. You put it together, you do the same thing down the road for your HTML for PC, your PDF for PC, marketing. So you've got 2, 4, 5, 10 different ways to look at this material. You basically end up being able to automate and control all of this, and you keep that audit trail. So you can take everything and make sure that it satisfies governance requirements. For example, if you're in a controlled industry like semiconductor or medical device, aerospace manufacturing, and somebody says, why was the change made? Where was the change made? Who approved the change? These are things that add massive, massive risk management value to an organization. DITA, when managed in a CCMS, allows the enterprise to track and then recreate any publication, complete with who made the changes, when the change was made, why it was made, down to the sentence or even the word level. That's not always required, but if it is, automation through that PDF or HTML or whatever output can be done because behind the scenes you're using DITA and a CCMS. I showed you two outputs. I showed you a PDF and I showed you the AEM sites. So whether it's PDF, HTML5, if it's mobile for tablets, phones, whatever device, people are demanding content in various formats. They don't even know that they're demanding it. They just want to access it from any device, the phone, the tablet, the desktop. The more accessible your content is on whichever device they use, the better the experience is going to be with your product and with your company. And the better the experience is, the greater the opportunities for the business. A huge benefit of DITA is that you can output content to just about any format from one source. We're working now with an aerospace client, manufacturer, that wants to take the same content that a pilot sees in a print publication for a flight operation, that the pilot also has access to in a quick reference, that it's on a digital display inside the cockpit, and in the future, potentially even getting it to the point where it's fully aware of the airport, the tail number, all of that information consolidated into one deliverable that shows the right information immediately, regardless of the environment. We're working with an automotive manufacturer, and in their environment, the print manual that goes into the glove box is every bit as much an important component of the car as the tires, the brakes, the engine. It cannot roll out as finished without the documentation. But that documentation should also be correctly available on the heads up or inside the vehicle on the display so that you get exactly what you need, the right information, the right time, the right format, so that you can make the judgment call on what to do next. PDF, HTML5, any type of output. DITA lets you create many different formats from one source, and you're not using multiple tools. You're using one to create the content that the end users need without having to duplicate content creation and management over and over and over. Also, side benefit, no author is responsible for formatting the content. They can't. The layout and the design of every single published deliverable is automatic. This enforces more consistency in branding. And it's because what the author sees being just one version that they stop thinking about, oh, that list needs this many levels of indent, or that table has to have a blue heading. And instead they can focus on the value of the content. Also mentioned conditional publishing. That's number 9 of 10. So we're starting to wrap up and we've got about 15, 20 minutes left. For many enterprises, software, aviation, a key piece of DITA functionality is going to be the ability to customize the info automatically. So imagine client, model, product combinations exist, and you need to tailor it and customize. It's almost impossible to put together. Here, I have 2 structural environments, upstream and midstream, but each of them can be across 3 countries. So I have 6 different combinations. I don't want to write it 6 times. I want to write it once and put into place a couple of those little extra pieces. I have to put the effort into creating it once, but with attributes. This lets an author write this one complete set of content once and then create deliverables that are tailored on the fly to the specific need. It cuts down on the author time, the review time, the overall ongoing maintenance of content. If you've used Excel's filter capabilities, you can basically just see the content you want and filter out the rest. So imagine having a list of all of your customers and sorting them by country, or only seeing specific states, or only seeing opportunities where it's a new sale as existing in your database instead of a client that you have already got an established relationship with, because it changes the way you communicate. As an example, if you're writing policy and procedure in oil and gas, insurance, aerospace, the details apply differently to different roles. Pilot on a plane. She doesn't necessarily need to see the de-icing information on the screen of taking off from the Bahamas. If you've got another pilot on the same plane and daily flying in and out of northern parts of Canada, he likely needs to see a lot more of the information that's relevant to de-icing. The really cool part of that drives me nuts to see if-then statements in documentation. You're the company that made my thing. You're the manufacturer. You're the software company. You are whoever. You should know what I have. You should know how I'm using it based on my patterns. And don't teach me to ignore your words. If-then statements mean I can ignore at least half of what you've written, because you have an if this condition, then do that, else another condition, do something else. You might have more. If then, well, Apple platforms, Microsoft platforms, Android platforms, there's 3. I'm ignoring 2/3 of what you've written. You're teaching me not to pay attention to what you write. That's a bad idea. With DITA, you don't create this separate, mostly duplicated piece of content for every role and product and platform and audience. DITA lets you create all of your content once and then filter out what you don't need, delivering just the right details to the right people. And if it turns out that they actually might want to see more, let them pick. Don't make the arbitrary decision that you're going to deliver just the Android version, just like there's no arbitrary decision here to deliver just the US version. The option to choose the Canadian or the Indian version of the content exists for the audience. That brings me to 10. User experience. This is where it should be. Today, it's become crucial. You have to know about and design for the consumption of content by your end user. The end user progresses through this entire journey when it comes to your content. Even if content creation spans different departments inside your enterprise, the end user doesn't care. It's all your content as far as they are concerned. When you go and you watch anything, it doesn't matter what the first couple of screens that pop up in a movie are. It's Disney, and you know it's Disney because it's one of those traditional Disney animations, or it's Marvel, or it's Star Wars. They don't care about all of the other production things. It's a Disney product, the end. And the Disney product extends to things like the theme park and Disney Plus if you've subscribed to it. So content is content as far as your audience is concerned. The consistency of the customer journey becomes the driving force. Messaging. It doesn't matter what department creates content. The information should not and cannot have discrepancies. You need more than a description of the product and the feature written by different people at different times. The message has to be consistent across the enterprise. If not only does it open up things like liability and risk, but it also starts to change the experience in tone, in implementation, even in the quality of the images that are being displayed on screen, jumping back and forth. Voice, everybody should hear the same message from the same source, no matter where or how that they're listening or reading your message. Everything that your company creates should focus on experience for the client and do so in a consistent and brand-focused tone. And speaking of brand, everything from the logo to the font choices, all of these have to be consistent across the board. It's the baseline on which you will be judged for your brand, no matter what part of a customer journey they've reached. There's also the idea of progressive disclosure. You've probably used it without even knowing it's there. It's like a teaser or advanced notice of more content. As you travel through the journey environment, you start to get more and more information the deeper you dive in. With DITA, the progressive disclosure can be automatically enabled in things like HTML5 or a mobile app. Users also want to be able to work in a functional HTML environment when the content is starting to scale. There's a point at which there's so much information that you have to give them multiple entry points. You don't know where they're going to start. You have to make it easy to find specific information. Example, consider the analogy of those big box home improvement websites. I had to use a lot of them as we built the log home. There's search functionality, but it comes back way too broad, and I've got to narrow it down to exactly what I want. So I would filter down results and find a specific piece of hardware that I'm looking for. I'd look for kitchen cabinet knobs, or I'd look for electrical wire, or I would look for compressors. I then wanted to know, what is the price of it? What is the weight of it? How soon can it be shipped? What is the customer experience? How many people have given it at least a 4-star rating? Now, some of that the writers can have responsibility for, but the writers don't know if this topic has a 3-star, a 4-star, or a 5-star rating. So there's a lot of information that comes together. And if as an end user, you're having trouble finding the information that you need in a library that somebody has put together, you go to the competition. DITA supports tagging and categorizing. So the HTML rendering of the content lets users find what they want and find it quickly. That's the faceted search idea. It can be invaluable if it's enabled through a strong infrastructure such as what DITA provides. DITA content lets a lot of metadata be associated with it as well. So findability, enhanced overall search engine optimization. So for anyone playing buzzword bingo, there's SEO. You associate that careful planned set of metadata values to discrete pieces of content, and it increases the reach of the website, drives successful findability for everything your visitors need. Internally, you could deliver pre-approved, high-quality content that's findable, rather than that traditional mess of pages, libraries, and sites that people throw into SharePoint all the time. External facing content, let the end user pick and choose the product version, the product combinations, the operating system, whatever, so that they see what applies to them. So starting to wrap it up, DITA's strengths are very much focused on the flexibility and extensibility that it provides. It can be used to create the content that you need regardless of the type of content or who your end users are. It's better, it's faster, it's more effective type of an environment for content management. Back it up with a well-planned unified content strategy. We are working with clients where it is saving them millions of dollars. It is unbelievable the number of resources that can be freed up so that instead of going in and doing click monkey repetitive rote work in regards to content, they can now put their focus back into the development, the building, the planning, the innovating that's done inside a business, because the content lifecycle becomes as automated and transparent, yet still managed, as possible. DITA's adoption started with the TechCom side, but it's primed and ready for a much wider adoption across all content creators in an enterprise. There's definitely some interesting times ahead. Now, if this sounds good, you could start exploring a couple of different options. See how DITA works with you. Partner up in the development of a content strategy. Build your team, your vendors, your partners into a consolidated unit that helps move your business forward. The goal is to create, edit, manage, and publish all of the content for a unified content strategy. Absolutely, we can help you. Publishing Smarter is our website. You can track us down. This information is based on a white paper that Adobe had us work with. So you can scan the QR code with your phone. It should jump you to the paper for a download. You can try to type in that entire URL. Don't try to type in that URL, it's brutal. You can jump into the video at any time and jump ahead. If you're jotting down notes, you can just write down slide 19 or 1353 or so, so 150 into the video. You can go to our SlideShare and find the video there. I'm going to upload the slides. As far as services on our side is concerned, We work with clients, we help them create content, manage the information, deliver it, work through their social platforms, listen to what it is that customers and internal users are saying, that improve all of that same workflow. Go back, do a better job of creating and managing and delivering and so on. So my contact information is here. That includes my cell phone number, which is sitting next to me, my email address. If you wish, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And again, you can visit publishingsmarter.com at any point in order to learn a little more about what it is and how we do that. Lastly, a quick thank you to all of you, Learning DITA for organizing the webinar, Adobe for their help in putting the white paper in place in the beginning, and everybody who has attended for the time and the interest that you've shown. I'll go back one slide to my contact information and leave it there. And Elizabeth, if there's any questions, feel free to fire away and I'll see if I can address them. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Bernard. That was a great presentation. Before I ask a question, I did have a comment, and someone said, for working on only 3 hours of sleep, Bernard is at the top of his game, interesting and engaging.
Boom.
So there you
Nailed
go.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So a couple quick questions. First, you mentioned earlier on in the presentation how there are a lot of tools out there. So at what point in the process should you start picking your tools?
There's being a consultant, the answer is it depends. It really does. It does depend a little bit. And if you already have legacy tools, people sometimes feel connected to those. I'm not a big fan of just because it already exists, you should continue to use it. And even, again, I'll draw on the analogy of having done a build of a house. I can go out and I can get a hammer for about $8 at Home Depot. I can also get the same size, generally speaking, idea of a hammer for $70 or $80 at Home Depot. And the reason to use one or the other, even though they're both hammers, varies. And then I can look at it and go, well, I can buy a hammer, which drives nails, which fasten things. I can get a screwdriver, which drives screws that fasten things. I can get a nail gun. I can get glue. I can get rope. It depends on what you're fastening and why and what the reasons are. The same thing with the tools. If you're looking at your tools, consider the functions, consider the things you need to be able to do, and evaluate the tools you have and the tools that are available. The really nice thing, we do this with a lot of clients that are looking at tool decisions. We take some of the legacy content that they have and convert it to DITA, hand it back to them and say, every single tool vendor that comes along and says they're going to do a demo, have them use this. And then you can start to look at it, and instead of dealing with a checklist of 10 things, you can go in and say, show me how it works. What's my author experience? You can have your authors watch and participate interactively. The tool should be something where you can be taught relatively easily. So taking it away from the glib, it depends, I would say consider the tool as part of an overall solution. Consider early if you have sample material that you can pass to tool vendors, whether it's authors or a CMS or anything, translators, so that it's representative of your real content, and then see how the tool works in your real work environment. And that might mean that you go in and you show them how you're currently doing things, whether it's directly with a vendor or through a partner. The tool is almost secondary to the functionality that you want of all of the components coming together, because the tools do become interchangeable and replaceable. The biggest warning I'll give you on the tool, if it's an author tool, this doesn't apply as much anymore. But if it is a CMS, be aware that many CCMS tools allow their own metadata to be used when you're working with content. But if you change tools, their proprietary metadata may not necessarily travel with the XML you're interchanging. So you can interchange your content, but it may not necessarily track, let's say, your entire revision history or all of the information about who the author was, unless you put that information into your DITA content. So tools is a tricky answer. I would say keep it in consideration throughout the entire content strategy, but don't let it drive it, and keep it there as something in the back of your mind at every single phase of it. So
Okay.
hopefully that helps address it in both a consultant and a non-consultant way.
Great, thank you. We are actually out of time. We're getting ready to start our next session. So if you have any additional questions, you can send your questions to experts@learningdata.com, or you can reach out to Bernard personally using his contact information that he's provided. And one of my colleagues will drop that email address in the chat box. Also, I'm also going to drop a link for the evaluation survey in the chat box. So if you could take just a few minutes to fill that out, we'd really appreciate the feedback. I know we all enjoyed this presentation. There's a lot of great information there. So thank you so much. And thank you for joining us for this Learning to the Live presentation. Thank you, Bernard.
Certainly. Thanks again to everybody who attended, and appreciate your time today. Take care, Elizabeth. Bye for now.
You too.